pleasure to bring you our November e-learning session this month in the hands of Shawna and Bryan from, as I said, Edmonton, Alberta, representing NAIT, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. Bryan and Shawna, the gang is all yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Tara. Before we begin, we just wanted to say hello and give you a brief introduction of us. So I'm Shawna Greer, and I was the project lead for the Essential Effect project. And I've worked as the communications specialist supporting NAIT's Department of Advancement for nearly 5 years now. But I've been at NAIT for 11 years. So within that time, I've held a few different roles working with advancement. When I first came to NAIT, I was in prospect research. Then I moved into special projects, role supporting the department with a variety of projects in event planning, donor relations, alumni relations, annual giving, and fund development.
Okay, and I'm Bryan Alary. I've worked in the post-secondary sector for 8 years in different roles in strategic communications, media relations, storytelling, and issues management. I've worked in central units and faculties and departments at different institutions. And I've been the team lead of external communications here at NAIT since 2017. And Shawna's a member of the external communications team. And prior to communications, I was a journalist and worked at something called a newspaper. Okay. So a little bit about what we're going to learn today, or what we hope you'll take away. So you'll hear about how NAIT's Departments of Advancement and Marketing and Communications collaborated on a milestone project to celebrate the largest fundraising campaign in our institution's history. That campaign was called Essential, and it raised $125 million. The project we're talking about specifically today is branded as the Essential Effect 100 Reasons to Celebrate, incorporated strategic digital storytelling, content marketing, and donor stewardship. A few things that we hope you'll take away are about how advancement, marketing, and communications professionals can work together and deliver strategic storytelling, how to identify common goals and ways to measure a project's success, and how to develop a systematic plan and process that is still flexible. And flexibility really came in handy during this project. And before we get too far into it, let's share a little bit about who we are, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, or NAIT as we're widely known. We're a polytechnic, so that means we're a little bit different. We deliver hands-on technology-based education and applied research, and all of our programming, there's a very strong connection to industry.
So we also wanted to give you just a brief background about the project's origins. So why Essential Effect? Back in the fall of 2017, Advancement wanted to find a significant way to celebrate the support we received from donors and show the impact of Essential, the NAIT campaign. And that was the largest fundraising campaign in NAIT's history. The public phase of that campaign was launched in November of 2014. And by the campaign's end, NAIT surpassed that goal, raising $125 million. Some key areas that the campaign supported included applied research, campus development, such as facilities, program support, and gift in kind, and student success initiatives. So that includes scholarships, bursaries, mental health programs, and other initiatives that directly support our students. During the fall 2017 semester, we were just getting ready to celebrate the success of the campaign the following spring. And that's when the idea came up to share 100 pieces of content leading up to the event. By that point, we were already halfway the semester, so planning had to happen pretty quickly. So we initiated the planning of the project in November, and by March, we were ready to launch. So we called the project Essential Effect 100 Reasons to Celebrate. And it was a multi-platform donor stewardship and public awareness campaign focused on sharing 100 ways donors have made an impact on the NAIT community. So why 100 pieces of content specifically? There were 3 primary reasons that we outlined. First, it aligned with our original $100 million fundraising goal. Second, it gave us the breadth to engage a broader range of donors and also showcase all the areas of support. And third, it created several opportunities to share content publicly about the campaign's impact. So some of the key elements that we identified to move us forward from the shell of an idea to fully executing the Essential Effect project was the following. So we needed to, first, we needed to find a place to house the content. And so we worked with our web team in marketing communications, and we discussed developing a microsite. So essentially that would have been a sub-site that would exist alongside our existing giving website. However, as the project progressed, the team saw an opportunity to redevelop the giving site. And this was for one reason. At that time, NAIT.ca was undergoing migration to a new content management system. So as part of the website redesign, the main page on the giving site was redeveloped under the new content management system to house the content produced as part of the project. So any of the content we developed was on that main page. And you can see an example of this on the screen capture on this slide, and which it does show the tile view of the stories and how it was displayed on the page and how it served how that served as a content hub. And as you would scroll further down the page, you would be able to load more stories and navigate to those pages. Another key element was incorporating strategic storytelling and content marketing. So as you know, storytelling is not necessarily new to nonprofit communications. We all know that one of the best ways to convey the impact of philanthropy is through storytelling. So by featuring real donors, students and staff, we were able to show the faces of those who were involved or those who were helped through the campaign. And when I say strategic storytelling, we really did put a lot of thought behind the stories we would tell and share. But I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in just a little bit. And then the other element was developing campaign-specific branding. So to tie all the elements together, special branding was designed for the web, for social media and print. And that all helped create a visual cohesion between all the content that was produced. And I also wanted to add that the branding was tied into the event collateral at the campaign celebration. So that really did make everything all consistent with the Essential Effect theme and branding. And when we were trying to create the brand, we really wanted to signify the impact of the fundraising campaign. That was a really important aspect, and to really showcase donors who contributed to the campaign. So the word essential is derived from NAIT's brand statement, "We are essential," to leverage our strong brand presence here in Alberta and Edmonton and celebrate the campaign's success, very much locally as well as provincially. So we also wanted to include a tagline, and that's 100 reasons to celebrate. And that was to tie directly to the fact that we were sharing 100 pieces of content. So that would be clear to our audience. So by the end of the project, we had shared 100 pieces of content, and we did that through a variety of different formats. Almost 50% of the content we produced was nearly created. The rest of the content was curated. So that means that we We looked at previous social media posts as well as content that was previously published in other locations or sources, such as NAIT's news pages, Tech Life, our alumni publication, and specifically we included 51 short and long form stories, 18 graphics with donor and student ambassador testimonials. And you can see an example of that here on the screen, where we included a photo of a donor and we interviewed her, and we pulled a quote from that interview to include about why she feels it's important to support our students. We also published 14 videos, and those videos were either created throughout the whole term of the campaign. Only 3 were actually newly created during the timeline of this project. And we pulled in 17 or created 17 social media posts as unique pieces of content. And you can see an example also on the screen of one of the posts we created and curated showing Pearl Ivy. And Pearl is the beloved dog of one of our donors who established a name scholarship in honor of her. And we love this story so much and thought there was no better way to illustrate the support that the donor provided than sharing a photo of Pearl on Instagram, which we also later published on the Content Hub as well. And of course, developing a marketing strategy to distribute the right content on the right platform was absolutely essential. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. First things, I'm just going to pass things back to Bryan to talk a little bit more about the planning involved.
Okay, thanks, Shawna. So 100 pieces of content. How did we pull all these elements together? It really did involve a number of people across the Institute. So at various stages, we tapped up expertise in areas such as donor relations, marketing, communications, fundraising, which includes annual giving and major gifts. There were other areas that helped out from time to time, student support areas like the NAIT's International Center, our scholarship office, and we also reached out to program staff. So these people from different corners of the Institute contributed in many ways, in many different ways. Some made content recommendations to advance our relationships with donors. They identified student ambassadors with compelling stories to show the impact of giving to NAIT, which, as Shawna said, is very important. Some served on a subcommittee to select donors or students to profile. We had staff develop the website, the microsite. Staff created content, helped develop stories, photography, graphics, web design, and videos. And it all involved publishing and sharing content through marketing and social platforms. So it sounds like a lot, but we were mindful not to ask too much of different units across the Institute. But the project was a strategic priority, but we also had to make sure we weren't taking resources away from our day-to-day operations or other important work, which was also strategic. We had just over a dozen staff in advancement in marketing and communications who were involved at various stages of the project. But really the core project team was about 6 staff who worked regularly on the project, either during the initial planning or development stages. As project lead, Shawna dedicated most of her time for the duration of the project planning, managing and contributing to the content production. In fact, she was working on the project even before I started at NAIT, and she walked me through. I remember when she told me, so we have this project, we're developing 100 pieces of content, and okay, what did I get myself into? But Shawna did a great job leading us through there, managing and contributing content. And we had Roseanne Camus, the marketer for Advancement, who dedicated a significant portion of her time developing the distribution strategy and managing creative requirements. And if we weren't able to draw on people in these areas, we definitely would have needed to scale back the scope of the project or increase our budget to contract more work. Okay. Sorry, guys. One sec. Okay, so the aligning the purpose and the outcome. Before we were able to move forward, we needed to sit down and develop a framework. You can't just roll out 100 pieces of content without a plan and a really robust plan. So like any of us in our industry would, we started by identifying our primary business goals and objectives. And then we looked at how the content could and should align with those goals and objectives. We wanted to make sure the content served a purpose. From there, we prioritized our audiences. Whom did we want to reach? We agreed our primary focus was to engage current donors so they felt appreciated. Next, it was important to develop key performance indicators and metrics to measure whether we met our goals and objectives. For example, if we wanted to increase awareness about the impact of the campaign, we identified how we could measure that quantitatively through web traffic, through social impressions and reach. We wanted to increase donor retention. We had to think about how we'd measure that through renewed support. And we'll get into that in more detail in a little bit. And then once we had an understanding of the audience and what we wanted to achieve, it helped us understand the type of content we needed. For example, one of our goals was to show the impact of the campaign on NAIT students and the value giving has on our community, essentially to increase awareness. We wanted to create content that demonstrates student success and evokes an emotional response to the social impact of giving. So for that, our primary audience was current donors to ensure that they're making, to show that they've made a good investment at NAIT. One of our stories profiled an aspiring tradesperson, Megan, who suffered an injury that actually led to some serious complications. Superbugs are no joke. But despite the injury and her experiences, Megan stuck to her career path. And she was able to do that thanks to the many ways donors have supported the quality of her education. And now Megan wants to be a role model to women seeking careers in the trades. So this particular story had several key outcomes, including nearly 2,000 total web page views, nearly 50,000 impressions on Twitter and LinkedIn. And it was also a valuable stewardship touch point with the leadership donor that also shared it to their networks, which contributed to the story's reach. And just as a bit of an aside, the interview with Megan led to a second story about her and her experiences with gender bias in the skilled trades and what NAIT is doing to take leadership in that area. And that story also won an award from CCAE. So that kind of connection doesn't happen without a strong team working together.
So also a key part of the process was auditing and identifying content. So that was actually one of the first things we did, was audit existing content. So part of that involved creating an inventory, or some might call it a story bank, of existing assets. So any of the stories, news releases, photos, videos, graphics that we already had. And by doing that early on, it helped provide an idea of what we had to work with and how much content we would need to update or produce from scratch. So looking back at our goals and what we wanted to achieve throughout the project, we also had to develop content criteria that would guide the story selection and help that process. Specifically, we wanted to make sure that we included content that demonstrated a breadth of different things. So for one, we wanted to clearly showcase our campaign priorities. So the programs, facilities, and other areas that were supported throughout the campaign. Our key constituencies, so our donors, we wanted to make sure that we had represented a broad range of donors, and that included leadership, corporate partners, mid-level corporate partnerships, alumni, staff, and also friends of the institution. And we also wanted to showcase the various ways to make a gift. So that might include stories about bequests, staff campaigns, gift in kind, annual gifts, and so on. And we also thought it was super important to showcase the diversity of our donors. So we recognize that our donors are all different and all have their own story and motivation for giving. So we felt that was important to bring to the forefront. And of course, naturally, we wanted to showcase the impact of giving on our students as well as the broader community. So examples of that include students who were helped during their time of need. Maybe they received mental health counseling on campus, or they received an emergency bursary. Also, we wanted to showcase successful alumni who have had a broader impact on the community and in the past had benefited from donations through scholarships or other programs. And so by clearly laying out that criteria, it helped us understand the types of content we needed to complete the project. And it also helped us see where we could repurpose or update existing content and identify any gaps where we would need to create anything new. For example, while we were reviewing our assets, we saw a need to include more impact stories on student success that went beyond scholarships. Although scholarships are very important, sometimes they can be a really, really easy way to show impact, but there are so many other ways that our donors have an impact on our campus. So we wanted to make sure we were representing that. So from there, we were able to identify other areas on campus supported throughout the campaign. And as you can see in this screenshot on the slide, this is one of the stories we created to address that gap. This was a super cute story about Flynn, our resident therapy dog, and the Pause for a Break therapy dog program. So this story provided with a great opportunity to show the impact of this program, this particular program, on students' success during particularly stressful times such as exams. Another really, really important part of the process was to develop a schedule and workflow. As we were getting farther and farther into production, we're grateful that we had taken the time to outline a schedule and identify key processes during our initial planning process or planning phase. So earlier on in that semester, we identified roles and responsibilities. We wanted to be sure to define reviews and approvals as part of that. And as many of you might know, the review and approval stage is where a project can really lose momentum. And that's why we felt it was important to be clear about who needs to review the work and at what stage. And we felt that really did help us with any potential bottlenecks. For example, we wanted to build in additional time that would allow advancement to review content with our donors before we publish it. So by identifying a workflow and who was responsible for what was really key to keeping us on that schedule. Also important was identifying any key milestones and timelines. So this was pretty essential to making sure that we were on track. And part of that could involve creating a production schedule, or you could use a Gantt chart or any of those other project management tools. For us, we used a project management tool called Rike. And Rike really did help with the planning, scheduling, and assigning of projects and tasks in the marketing and communications department. And we also did make sure one of our key leads in donor stewardship, Kathy Horrocks, did have access to view some of the keys and some of the tasks and projects that were undergoing as part of this project. So she was able to kind of see what was happening at any given time. So this tool was definitely an asset for us for the project, and it made it easy to collaborate with other teams in marketing communications on tasks and assignments. And of course, we made sure to schedule regular check-ins to provide updates and progress reports. For the campaign wrap-up in particular, there were several different projects undergoing at the same time. So while we were planning an event celebration, the Essential Effect awareness campaign was happening all at the same time. alongside many other different things. We were part of that steering committee, and we used that opportunity to provide committee members regular updates about where we were in this project. Beyond that, we did form several subcommittees that met more frequently to provide updates about progress, as well as identify stories for assignment. So having these regular updates in particular was really important, particularly at certain points during the project when we had to make key decisions or when we would hit any roadblocks. For example, we were working on some pretty tight timelines nearing the end of the project, and there did come a point in time where we had to make a decision or several decisions on whether to pursue a story. In the case where we were having difficulty scheduling time with a donor, so having those regular check-ins was really important to us.
Okay, so we developed most of our content in-house, but we did hire contract writers for some of the stories. So for that reason, we developed some tools that would give all of our content creators clear guidelines with background information to help them get started. We took a page from our alumni magazine process and drafted assignment letters for both in-house and external writers, and that provided important details about the assignment. And it helped set expectations and identify timelines, as well as outline a bit about the editing process. We also ensured that they had access to our brand resources, such as our style guide, to keep all of our content consistent. Another significant part of the project involved developing a multi-channel marketing strategy. So content was distributed over a variety of platforms. We shared organically on social through LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a paid social component on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We bought digital ads, pay-per-click, Google, and some with industry publishers. Some print ads. We had one on campus in a transit shelter, but also in a few industry publications, as well as in post media. We leveraged existing print and digital assets, and that included our alumni magazine, Tech Life, our alumni newsletter, annual giving newsletter, and community report, which was a printed publication distributed to government, industry, and other stakeholders. We shared stories internally at NAIT using our staff intranet and on campus display screens and ads. And our stories and content factored into special events such as scholarship celebrations, gift announcements, and the campaign celebration, of course. And we did all this with a very modest budget. Most of the money we spent was for boosted social media posts and pay-per-click digital ads. Our marketer, Roseanne, did an amazing job matching the right content for the right platform. And in terms of organic social sharing, our new website included social sharing widgets on each story page and on the main nait.ca/giving page, so users could share content right from there with their networks without even having to click to another level to a story page. And we also leveraged the networks of our donors, encouraged them to share. To make it easy, we created a social media toolkit for every story. And this toolkit included some sample posts with key messages, photos, and the customized bit.ly link to the story with a special hashtag, the essential effect. Okay, so what did we learn? When we reviewed the first batch of content we planned to publish, we wanted to bring more authenticity to the mix. So we decided to curate some of these social media posts from various stages of the campaign and include that on the hub, which is what we called the main landing page to the giving site. And these posts were either posted by one of NAIT's accounts or by donors' social media accounts. So that's where the toolkit did double duty for us. Our web team was able to find a way to pull this content into the website. And by doing this, we were able to capture and share real, authentic moments that brought a relatable, user-generated dimension to the content hub. We also included photos that weren't overly staged or were supplied by our subjects. This not only added to the authentic feel, it also saved us from arranging photography for every story, which is time consuming for everybody involved, and which helped alleviate potential strain on resources or bottlenecks. We also thought it was important to include our donor and student ambassador voices as part of the project by doing a graphic with a pull quote from them to show the impact of their own words.
So another key learning for us was how did we meet our goal by engaging our donors? So by the end of the project, we felt we met our goal to increase engagement with donors. For example, we had interacted with 70 donors to create the content. So any of the content that we produced, we did have to have either meetings that took place either face-to-face or over the phone, and in many cases involved more than one touch point. Anecdotally, we did receive quite a bit of positive feedback from donors through our account managers. So they would send messages back to the account managers saying that they were so, glad to have been part of this project and, be featured as one of the contributors to this campaign. And we also learned how important it is to engage our donors to be our ambassadors. And that means, having them share to their own social platforms, as Bryan mentioned, creating that toolkit for them to make it easy for them to share to their own networks was key to them, having that ability and just the comfort level of doing so. For some of our donors, it's not second nature. But almost 50% of our donors shared through their own social networks, or they shared with their family and friends and family members, or some of the companies shared through their own corporate communication accounts. So some of that sharing resulted in lead generation, with donors acting as referrals for more giving. For example, one of our donors shared a story we wrote about him with his cousin, who happened to be looking for a way to make a donation after her husband passed away. So he had a strong connection to NAIT, and she decided to establish an endowment in his name. Since then, she has doubled the principal of that endowment. And further to that, while generating donations wasn't a primary goal that we identified initially as we were outlining this project, we did manage to track 16 online conversions, which was attributed specifically to the project, even though a lot of our content didn't have a strong call to action to donate. As many of you know, because this was primarily a stewardship campaign, we felt it was more important to emphasize the thanking of our donors and acknowledging our donors. Also another key learning, how did we increase the awareness of the campaign? So we did have to put a number of mechanisms into place to track and measure our success. So as part of that, from March 18th to June 30th alone, there was nearly 20,000 page views on the giving site. And that was an increase of more than 800% over what we had on our old giving site the previous year. There was also earned media, which covered the success of the campaign. And that was the result of a print ad that we published in Tech Life. And more than 2 million impressions on social media channels. So as you remember, we shared on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Social media, both paid and organic, accounted for 25% of all our web traffic. Facebook accounted for most of that traffic, followed by LinkedIn and Twitter. And it was really interesting for us to see that several of our referrals from social were in many cases a result of some marketing spend. So we would either boost posts or sponsor posts, and we would see definitely a jump in the number of number of referrals to our web pages. And we also came out of the project with a greater understanding of the type of content that resonates with our audiences. So, you know, after the campaign or after the project end, we did look at all the stories, and we did a comparison of top performing stories and some of the lower performing stories. And the stories we saw the greatest engagement were those that that were shared by either our donor or student ambassadors. And we also saw some higher page views for stories we sponsored or boosted, as I just mentioned. It's also interesting to note that on the giving site, as you recall, on the main page of our content hub, you would have to scroll down to view more stories. 68% of all users visiting that page clicked on the load more stories button on the bottom of the page, with users clicking and navigating to other stories. And that was actually a bit of a surprise to us, considering that it's not typical user behavior. Generally speaking, the farther you go down on a web page, that usually means you'll see a drop off in user interactions, but that was not the case for this particular hub. And now that we're looking forward, for next steps, we are looking at, I guess, looking at better insights into our donor behavior and our users' behavior, and having a deeper understanding of our analytics and track accurately and show conversions. So those are projects that are on the horizon that we are looking forward to developing further, working with marketing communications and advancement in collaboration on that. So that's very exciting for us. And we're also looking at, okay, did it have an impact on our donors in terms of donor retention? And this is a longer term project, and it does involve a number of different components. By engaging donors to share their story, it does provide a cultivation opportunity, and the exact number of touch points that a donor has before they're likely to renew a gift, it does depend on a number of different factors. And you know, this project in particularly, or even if it's not just you know, it's not just project driven, anytime we profile a donor or we interact with a donor and highlight the importance of their partnership, it does have a role in engaging and stewarding them. So we're looking at, you know, how we can actually use these opportunities to definitely as part of our donor cultivation and stewardship plan. About 75% of our donors who were engaged throughout this project are still currently under pledge, so we can't say exactly right now if this did have an impact on donor retention, but we did provide a valuable engagement opportunity with about a dozen donors who are still showing their support in a variety of ways. So that about wraps it up for our presentation today. And we hope you were able to learn a few takeaways from our experience for your next project. Now we have a bit of time to answer any questions you might have.
That's a really good looking award, folks.
Thank you.
It's what greets visitors to the Advancement and Alumni Relations Office.
It looks like something ate it a little bit. It should have had the red all the way around.
I think that's just a glare.
Okay, because I was like, we might need to send some new red backing because we need to make sure that that's top shape.
No, it's still tip-top shape.
Good job. Just as a reminder to folks, please, your lines are muted. So we're asking you to leave your questions either in the Q&A box itself or the chat box. And as we wait for folks to get those questions in, any plans on what comes next? You're going to do 100 round 2?
I will have to probably say that is not in our immediate plans anytime soon. But, I do think it was a great opportunity for us to learn about what works for us. And yeah, it was a lot of work, I do have to say. And, it did give us some ideas of what we could possibly do in the future in terms of content and developing content and, what I guess our donors want. We're learning more and more that donors are looking for, storytelling. And we're seeing this particularly with our corporate donors as well, that they want to engage with us in this way. And they also want to promote partnership. As Bryan mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, NAIT is really focused on industry partnership. So that is more and more, we're just seeing that a lot of our industry partners are wanting to do more social promotion, to highlight our partnerships. So we're seeing more and more of that. So that's definitely a project on our horizon about how we can engage our corporate donors, but not only our corporate donors, our individual donors as well, using storytelling and also social promotion.
Right. And so of the 100 pieces, I know they were distributed across multiple channels, and you shared some of those metrics, but did you find that one particular channel or one particular medium, because you use videos and photos and different types of media, do you find that any of those had a better pickup than others?
I think that I think it was more about I think there was a magic mix, if you will, because Roseanne did a great job, because we did approach it by creating the content first and then finding the right platform to share the content. So she did a great job of looking at every piece of content and knowing, from her point of view as a marketer, what works on specific channels, where that piece of content perform the best. So I think that's probably the way that for this particular project, that was the approach that we took. And it really wasn't channel specific. It was really about evaluating content and understanding the audience in particular on particularly different channels, and knowing what would work best just based on previous posts that we've shared or previous strategies that we've executed.
Right. Well, perfect. Thank you for sharing that. So just as a reminder to folks again, we've got the Q&A box to submit any questions, as well as a chat box if that is more accessible to you. There's nothing right now in the queue, so I'll give folks another moment to see if there's any last minute burning questions. And as they do that, Shawna and Bryan, if you each had to kind of give a piece of advice, a scalable piece of advice for somebody who may not have the same sort of resources as NAIT does, what would you tell folks?
Well, I think that, yes, absolutely. We didn't have a whole lot of budget, but it was, as you mentioned, it was a resource heavy project. I think in the future, we did play a lot with user-generated content. And I think that might be an easier way, especially, if you have a smaller group that is able to dedicate their time to a project of this size. User-generated content is something that NAIT now is doing more and more of, with some really great success. I'll actually let Bryan talk about that a little bit more, but we found that I would probably do more of that. If I had to redo the whole project, I would probably bring in more user-generated posts. So that might involve social media posts. That might be it could look like a number of different things, but primarily we're using it right now on social media, especially on Instagram. And Bryan, Bryan and Liz Pittman, one of our social media specialists is doing a lot of great work around that, and I think to a lot of success.
Yeah, the work that we're doing with user-generated content on Instagram is primarily focused on the student experience side of things at the institution and some of the student services that we offer people. Students engage with that content a lot more when it's delivered authentically by their peers or people in the counseling center or the people that they're going to interact with. So this project kind of set the ground for that kind of use gen content. The toolkit that we developed for sharing content with donors on their channels, that's actually become something that we've used for different projects since this. And our office, our department, marketing and communications, we've gone through some agile methodology training, which focuses on the use of cross-functional teams. And this project was really an early test case for us to work collaboratively, both in the department and across the institution. So there are a lot of learnings from so many different aspects of this project that have helped us in other ways. So whether or not we would do this again at this scale is a question, but there are certainly a lot of great learnings that we took away from this. Great.
In the meantime, we have had 2 questions come up. One of them does definitely recognize the great work you guys have done, and this individual's wondering if you're able to share the budget to plan and implement the initiative, and was it part of the campaign envelope or on top of it? Did we lose you?
Tara, can you repeat the question? Our connection cut in a little bit there.
Yeah, hello? You were kind of coming in and out at the same time. So we'll try that again. The question was, are you able to share with the folks on the budget? And was it part of the campaign envelope or on top of it? I think we may be having a technical difficulty. We've lost the screen. Shawna, are you still on the line?
Yeah, we're here. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, I am just bringing up our...
Not to worry, we've still got you. We still have the attendees. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you better now.
Okay.
So don't worry. Sorry, the question again was what?
The budget for the initiative, if you're able to share it.
Oh, okay.
And was it part of campaign envelope or on top of it? So I'm assuming that question is regards to, was it part of a campaign budget, or was this a budget that came out of perhaps a different unit?
Mm-hmm. So it actually was not part of the original campaign plan. The campaign plan did outline that, there would be this element. However, this did come from the marketing and communications budget. And again, Bryan mentioned it was quite modest in comparison to, what it could have been. But it was actually all in, that's print, digital, any of our contracts, writing, all of that was less than $10,000. And part of the reasons why we were able to keep the costs at such a low level was, again, we were using a lot of social media. Social media was a champion for us. And also we were leveraging things that already existed. So having, being able to leverage Tech Life, being able to leverage existing publications and piggyback on those things really did allow us to stretch our dollar. And also, I cannot stress how great a job that Roseanne did in developing a real cohesive marketing strategy. She really identified those platforms and made sure that where she was spending her money would go the farthest. So I think that, given, a project of this magnitude, that our budget was, quite modest.
Certainly. And then one final question. How many people do you have working on your social media accounts?
Well, we have one dedicated digital communications specialist who does the primary postings with NAIT's Twitter and Facebook channels. We do have a team of marketers who create content for LinkedIn. That's pretty much it. We have 4 schools here at NAIT, and there's social media, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, that is all done at the school level. In some cases, there's teams in a school contributing to an editorial calendar.
And we should mention that
specific to this project, though.
No, I was just going to add to actually what you were saying. So those are actually program staff and usually admin staff that are contributing to school social media accounts. So,
yes, they've undergone some training from our digital comm specialist. Yeah.
And then for this particular project, it was, Liz, our digital communication specialist, she helped create a lot of the organic posts, as well as we did have Roseanne to support on the paid side of it.
Great. Thank you folks very much. To those who asked questions, I hope that covered it. If not, feel free to either do a quick follow-up and we can get that responded to. Otherwise, on the screen in front of you, after a moment of technical pause, back in action, and we've got the email and accounts for both Bryan and Shawna online. So thank you both for being accessible post-webinar. As a side note, I really liked librarian as a Twitter handle.
Oh, thank you.
Catchy. To everyone who participated today, I would like to thank you all very, very much, especially to Bryan and Shawna. Following the webinar, you will receive an evaluation. It takes no more than 3 minutes to do, and we kindly ask that you take the 3 minutes. That feedback will be sent back to the presenters and will be shared with CCA so that we're all able to continue to offer you strong and high quality content programming. And if there's anything at all you have questions about, please let us know. As well, our next e-learning, the last one for 2019, is December the 5th. We're also headed out west, so it's a session on job shadowing presented by Amy from the University of Alberta. So stay tuned for some additional great content, another conversation about the weather. Thank you guys very much for being with us. And Bryan and Shawna, again, thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.